And Hare Krishna. Good. Kalakanta, did you want to say anything, maybe a word of introduction to Puru Prabhu, for Puru Prabhu? But you'll have to unmute first.
Right. Hare Krishna, my humble obeisances, Guru Maharaj, my humble obeisances, dear devotees in Europe.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. Purushottam Kshetra Prabhu has been researching for some time about cow protection, agriculture, production, how this revolution can take place. And he did that, we learned, as he was doing a paid job that he was literally asked just to sit, and he researched for a few years a huge database of valuable information. And one of these informations is related to this topic which he started last week, which is nourishing the finer tissues of the brain. And he shows a correlation between certain types of foods and a specific acid, fatty acid, DHA for short. And today, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to explore your second part, which is the connection to Varnashram. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Purushottam Kshetra Prabhu is a disciple of HH Swami, as I understand. He's a senior devotee, very well appreciated for his services in the LA region. I know Subhas Prabhu has a great appreciation for him and for everything he does. He has been helping the ministry out in many different moments. And here he is enlightening us tonight. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
So, shall we go ahead?
I would say so. Let us
All right.
proceed.
I'm going to attempt to share my screen. See what happens. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. So, I'm going to start, we'll do a little DHA review very quickly, but we'll start here. So a book published this year called A Small Farm Future, making the case for a society built around local economies, self-provisioning, agricultural diversity, and a shared earth. Clearly outlines the details of the collective karmic reactions people are now inescapably subject to accepting. Srila Prabhupada highlights this plight. Living entities are roaming within the universes in different species of life and in different planetary systems, enjoying or suffering the reaction of pious or impious activities, but they have no information how to get out of this entanglement of repetition of birth and death. Due to the darkness of ignorance, most living entities have no idea about the values of life. However, by his grace, we do have this insight. So the author of this book, Mr. Samaj, makes his case on the basis of ecology, which we can understand as Mother Earth's vital signs. And for virtually all of human history, we have intentionally work to remain in balance with the local plant and animal characteristics of our environment to maintain a successful agrarian society, which, when practiced with respect for Mother Earth, brings us in harmony with and supportive of her ecology. Though he does not say it directly, A return to this stewardship mentality will facilitate a return to Mother Bhumi's ecological balance on Earth. So this one author recently stated, modern humans and their ancestors may have had substantial impact on ecosystems for a very long time. He, from his frame of reference, mentions 125,000 years of human involvement in the ecosystem around them. So this author makes an extraordinary comment. Times of crisis and rapid change often call forth prophets to supply new stories. The best among them can discern and prefigure the shape of the emerging new reality, breathing life into it by naming its spirit or characterizing its logic, while somehow relating it authentically to older stories inherited from the past that make it feel familiar and ordained. When I read that, I thought he's speaking of Srila Prabhupada. So what is the unique quality found in the milk of properly cared for cows that is essential for developing the finer tissues of the human brain, and yet is not commonly available in a civilized human diet? It's called DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. There's one chemical that is found in every cell in the body, DHA. It plays a role in a long list of essential cellular functions. DHA is particularly abundant in the brain, especially the membrane surrounding the cells in the prefrontal cortex of the human brain, the seat of higher level cognitive activity. Within the context of specific experimental designs, changes in brain concentrations of DHA are positively associated with changes in cognitive or behavioral performance. We have shown that dietary DHA is crucial for large-scale brain organization. 5 major dimensions of cognitive functioning were assessed in this study with a 75-minute battery of neuropsychological tests. Higher DHA levels were related to better performance on tests of nonverbal reasoning and mental flexibility, working memory, and vocabulary. Now, it's important to know that cholesterol can be substituted in brain cell membranes for DHA. The body does this automatically when the dietary supply of DHA is inadequate to maintain basic cell membrane integrity. However, this substitution significantly limits the ability of brain cells to perform at full capacity. Thinking can become dull and other cellular functions will be compromised. DHA cannot be synthesized by the human body, so we must rely on dietary means to acquire it. Photosynthesis in plants powers the ultimate DHA chemical factory. Photosynthesis takes place most actively in the growing tips of plants. Virtually all medical professionals and nutritionists recommend acquiring dietary DHA from the marine food chain. If you can hear a kitty in the background, that's our 18-year-old kitty who's just not feeling so well right now, apparently. Marine sources of DHA are simply not ecologically sustainable at world population scale. Neither are DHA supplements commercially produced via a patented algae production protocol affordable for the general population. Cows, whom, as we all know, naturally choose to eat only terrestrial plants, have been incorporated into virtually every human culture across the vast temperate regions of the earth. Their milk and milk products are readily available to anyone almost anywhere. Inland populations, however, depend on long-distance transport for access to seafood, the marine source of DHA. Confined cows, whose diet is restricted to a very limited variety of plants and grains grown on artificially fertilized soil, the industrial dairy standard, have virtually no DHA in their milk, barring artificial supplementation with fish or algae oils. Few terrestrial sources of preformed DHA meet all three of these basic requirements for widespread dietary consumption: abundant, ecologically supportive, and potentially widely available. With the exception of milk from properly cared for cows, yet cows themselves do not produce DHA. So how can we enhance the quantity of DHA available for cows grazing on pasture plants? Here's a hint. Krishna is sometimes called Vanamali. Vana means forest and Mali means gardener. DHA must be present in the cow's diet to appear in their milk. We will see how this biological imperative is a key to the widespread implementation of Varnashram Dharma. Biodiversity, one key to abundant DHA. As farmers, we must work to ensure biodiversity in our pastures, thereby creating the best opportunity for some plants to be growing at any and all times of the year, season, climate, local weather conditions, soil status, and even the time of day. If given the opportunity in a rich, biodiverse pasture, cows will selectively choose to eat freshly growing plant leaves. Soil health, another key to abundant DHA. As farmers, we must work to ensure nutrient availability for robust photosynthesis and plant growth. Observant soil stewardship, maintain soil tilth, minimize aggressive tillage, keep the soil covered with green plants year-round, maintain soil organic matter, maintain a healthy soil microbiology, fungi, dung beetles, earthworms, eliminate water runoff, eliminate pesticide, herbicide, and inorganic nitrogen and phosphorus use. Agro-silvopastoral farming, incorporating agriculture, trees, and animals, known as Dehisa in Spain, Satayama in Japan, and in Hawaii as Apua, and more recently as permaculture, regenerative, or syntropic farming, along with other regional terms worldwide, has long been practiced as an intentional method of increasing biodiversity and soil health and productivity by combining perennial grain production, fruitful forestry, vegetable production, and the daily shifting of grazing herbivores, especially cows, from place to place in a sparsely forested, biodiverse, multi-level biome. From various passages in Srila Prabhupada's purports to the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Krishna book, we learn about the lush forest environment where Krishna grazes Nanda Maharaj's cows in the spiritual realm known as Goloka, the planet of the cows. All ecosystems have the interdependent layers called trophic levels. If the complexity of this basic layer increases, so do layers above. A healthier soil with more microorganisms will support more insects, more earthworms, more mites, more beetles. These in turn support more of the things that eat these, and so on up through the trophic levels of the food chain. Microorganisms at the lowest trophic level of the soil food web nutrient chain are fed when a cow passes dung and urine as she grazes. Soil lacking these microorganisms and organic matter provides little nutritive value to the organisms on the higher trophic levels. Specific attention to every aspect of soil health maintenance is essential for maintaining biodiversity and robust plant growth. Farmers who do not use destructive petroleum-based pesticides and herbicides and inorganic minerals applied to their soil using heavy, soil-destroying petroleum-powered tractors must be highly observant, thoughtful stewards of the local ecology of their farms. It's the farmer's job to understand and work with all the variables influencing the amount of DHA in the pasture plants available to their cows, and to ensure their milking cows have daily access to biodiverse pasture grown on healthy soil. The level of detailed, intimate knowledge of the natural environment present on the farm, including the quality of the land, the climate, the local plant and animal life, the different soils, the unique nature of their cows, is only perceptible to the small-holding farmer, for whom it is imperative to have the time, interest, and inclination to notice all the minute details of their local ecosystem. This farmer will constantly adjust all the farm's variables within their control to optimize the health of their herd and all the plant, animal, and human residents of the farm. This mentality ultimately engenders a fundamental appreciation for Srila Prabhupada's simple dictum, life comes from life. The denatured, monoculture-based industrial farming system, using dirt solely as a growing medium to provide a substrate for plant roots to absorb applied fertilizers, is deeply antithetical to a spiritually based lifestyle. One can take the flesh of a cow, develop the finer tissues of the brain, utilizing the DHA found therein, and yet they will remain bewildered by the material energy. Only those accepting milk offered in sacrifice to the Supreme Lord under the guidance of qualified Brahmins and Vaishyas from cows properly cared for will benefit both materially and spiritually. The social and economic conditions necessary for the proper stewardship of the ecosystem, the cows and bulls, and all the living entities in the region are naturally found in rural village communities practicing bhakti yoga. The full expansion of this lifestyle is known as Varnashram Dharma, a lifestyle dedicated and integral to supporting cow protection. What are these conditions? André Voisin, a member of the Académie d'Agriculture de France in Paris, a biochemist by training, but a farmer by inclination, was known to spend long hours watching his cows grazing the fields of Normandy. This scrutiny inspired his rational grazing management plan, which stated that the cow is a gourmet, treating their cows to monotonous meat and potatoes diet of only a grass with a bit of legume thrown in, not only insults their sophisticated palate, it may also cost you money in terms of lower milk production from pastures. The grazing season can be extended with planned plant diversity. Plant production increases with forage species diversity, especially in drought years, and this leads to increased animal production. Considering the many additional benefits of growing complex mixtures of forages, such as weed and stress-resistant pastures, along with greater stability of forage production year to year, why not give your herd of gourmets what they deserve? A rich, robust sward abounding in diversity. A longtime grassland and African wildlife conservationist, Alan Savory, is concerned about the widespread, accelerating desertification of formerly lush grasslands in the temperate regions of the world. He observed the beneficial environmental effects of a management system he calls holistic planned grazing. By frequently moving herds of domestic herbivores Cattle and cows in particular, from place to place on the land, they press their dung and urine into the soil, and having harvested only a small portion of the plant's tissue, they are relocated by the herdsman, rehabilitating devastated grasslands and regenerating diverse soil ecosystems. Mr. Savory's respected and widely touted discovery of holistic planned grazing, sometimes known as rotational grazing or other similar monikers, has been there written down in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam for more than 5,000 years for anyone to appreciate. The benefits of the milk produced in this manner are so satisfying that people have no desire for any other foodstuffs. In Vrindavan, there are cows that fulfill all desires, kamadhenus, and their number is unlimited. They graze from forest to forest and deliver only milk. People want nothing else. Both photosynthetic capacity and photosynthetic rate are strongly impacted by pasture management. Retaining adequate leaf area reduces the impact of grazing on photosynthetic capacity and enables the rapid restoration of biomass to pre-grazed levels. In addition to leaf area, pasture height has a significant effect on soil building, moisture retention, nutrient cycling, and water quality. To maintain photosynthetic capacity and to ensure rapid recovery, it is highly beneficial to remove stock from the pasture before you can see their feet. The magic of the method lies in the shepherds. More than mere guardsmen, they are experts in their craft, guiding livestock to appropriate grazing sites and moving them to new pastures when the time is right. They are trained to monitor the condition of the most palatable plants, avoid overgrazing and degradation of the natural vegetation, and to provide the land with appropriate rest and recovery. The manager of the state farm in the Cuban province of Villa Clara appears the perfect technocrat. He fought against using oxen to prepare the land in his farm during Cuba's special period of widespread economic austerity after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Within a few short months, Cubans lost their prime economic partner, trading sugar and tobacco for petroleum, tractors, and food. Eventually, this agribusinessman had no choice but to give in, since petroleum, tractor parts, and tires virtually disappeared from the Cuban countryside. He said, now he grudgingly admits that oxen have their benefits. Before, we could only fit 2 planting cycles into the rainy season, he said. For more than a month each year, we couldn't prepare the land because the tractors got stuck in the mud. But the ox doesn't have that problem. You plow the day after it rains, or even while it's raining if you want. As a result, he said, the farm harvests 3 crops a year instead of 2. Although the yield per cycle is lower, the annual yield is higher. Though plowing with an ox team goes back hundreds of years in Cuba, none of the farm workers or agronomists had ever farmed with oxen themselves. We had to hire some old campesinos from the nearby villages as consultants to teach us how to hitch up an ox team and plow with them. The state farm manager said, it's amazing how much those old guys know about farming. The fundamental spiritual nature and very real value of caring for and feeding cows throughout their entire natural lifespan, set in small communities dedicated to nurturing and protecting cows and bulls, goes far beyond the value of their milk products, dung, and urine, to literally drawing the principles of religiosity in liquid form. A community activist in the neighborhood of Antares, Havana, Cuba, during the Cuban special period states, "The special period taught me the value of spirituality, the strength of example. When one is trying to determine the worth of certain actions, one has to value the material aspects, but also those that are more subjective, more the spirit. We cannot just concentrate in giving people things. We must look after how they live their lives, what they value, and what they believe in." By milking Mother Cow, we draw out our own religiosity. Srila Prabhupada characterizes real religion as principles of personal behavior, pious behavior, which are meant to bring us to a minimum standard of human conduct suitable for understanding spiritual knowledge. As exemplified by Krishna and Balaram, the system of cow protection and agriculture, working the oxen, and living cooperatively in a Varnashram village community will, by the very nature and practical demands of this sattvic mode of goodness lifestyle, invoke within us the fundamental religious principles conducive to ultimately nurturing one's bhakti lata bij. For us to achieve this standard, so many working parts of the rural lifestyle need to be acknowledged as valid and realistic, then relearned, implemented, and harmonized according to each individual's personal dharma. So religious principle means you have to execute the preliminary formulas, but the ultimate end will be you'll have a spontaneous attraction for hearing about God or Krishna. What exactly are these principles of religiosity drawn out by our pious activities, caring for the cows and bulls, and how can they possibly ensure an adequate supply of DHA? Giving the bulls the form of dharma, economically valuable engagement, is one fundamental means to draw out the principles of religiosity. These four hooves represent the four pillars of spiritual life: mercy, cleanliness, austerity, and truthfulness. Slow working oxen require constant supervision by teamsters. This provides valuable engagement for a whole class of workers. A social system based on this principle will inherently quell the passionate, ecologically destructive lifestyle associated with the tractors of industrial agribusinessmen. If you want to make the whole human society perfect, then this Krishna consciousness movement should be introduced according to Krishna's instructions. If you want to do it in a large scale for the benefit of the whole human society. Now we are picking up some of them, the best. That is one thing. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, para upakara. Why only a certain section should be picked up? Let the whole mass of people get the benefit of it, but then it is required to be systematic. Therefore, we have to introduce this Varnashram Dharma. It must be done perfectly. It is possible, and people will become happy. The most basic formula for a sattvic life of goodness is drawing the principles of religiosity in liquid form. Without the mercy demonstrated in compassionate care and attention for all the devotees, plants, animals, including cows in particular, and humans, maintaining ecological balance is unattainable. Everyone must be present to do their particular service for the environment. Environmental scientists call these ecological services. Without the cleanliness of mind and body, supported by living in and maintaining a pure sattvic environment, the well-being of the cows will be lost. Without the austerity of a simple life, the economic pace necessitated by ox-based agriculture will seem impossible. Without the truthfulness born of humility and the acceptance of these principles for real freedom as valid, we will remain deluded, thinking ourselves to be smarter than Mother Nature. Success in the lifestyle of Varnashram Dharma is simply not possible if we ignore these principles. Maintaining these preliminary standards of pious behavior will, in due course of time, automatically develop within anyone all the qualities of genuine, spiritually learned scholars, the Brahmins. These are the principles of religiosity obtained as a result of slowly hand milking Mother Cow and working Father Bull. Our piety is nurtured and reinforced by the day-to-day activities of the cowherd and teamster working together with all the inhabitants of their village. Pious scholars, administrators and guardians, farmers, and economically motivated individuals, along with those inclined primarily to artistic or physical endeavors. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. The steady performance of these lovingly performed yet seemingly mundane duties in service to the cows, Krishna's dearmost friends, are the spiritually uplifting benefits we receive from the cow and bull. Srila Prabhupada explains the socioeconomic nature and value of the biodiversity required to worship the cows grazing on Govardhan Hill. Lord Krishna practically described the whole economy of the Vaishya community. In all communities in human society, including the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, Chandalas, etc., and in the animal kingdom, including the cows, dogs, goats, etc., everyone has his part to play. Each is to work in cooperation for the total benefit of all society, which includes not only animate objects, but also inanimate objects like hills and land. The Vaishya community is specifically responsible for the economic improvement of the society by producing grains, by giving protection to the cows, by transporting food when needed, and by banking and finance. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rain. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Food grain or vegetables are factually eatables. The human being eats different kinds of food grains, vegetables, fruits, and the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and sufficient rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc. And they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yajna, specifically Sankirtan Yajna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. Krishna specifically directs Nanda Maharaj to feed the cows nice grasses. This is the farmer's yajna. These nice grasses, in concert with sunshine and the soil of Govardhan Hill and all the forests surrounding Vrindavan, utilize photosynthesis to produce, amongst other nutrients, DHA, brain food for the entire community. The cows, nice grasses and healthy soil maintained by dung and urine from the cows are the entire health and wealth of the village. Here we have the essence of the spiritually based bio-socioeconomic cycle personally demonstrated by Krishna and Balaram for the welfare of all living entities. Give money and charity to the Brahmins, give everyone prasad, feed the cows, nice grasses, and ultimately offer back the resulting produce in the form of grains and ghee into the sacrificial fire in worship of Govardhan Hill. Govardhan Hill and the surrounding forests of Vrindavan, the source of these same sumptuous grasses, whose soil is nourished by cow dung and urine, is rotationally grazed under Krishna and Balaram's watchful eyes. In turn, the oxen and cows will do their utmost out of love for Krishna and the other residents of Vrindavan to produce grains, milk, and ultimately ghee, which can be offered and fed to everyone. The cowherd and teamster must maintain a steady sattvic lifestyle to be materially and spiritually qualified to provide proper care and suitable living arrangements for the cows and bulls, just as the Brahminical pujari serving the deity in the temple maintains a similar sattvic lifestyle. Spiritual benefits actually derive from the steady quality and caring nature of our behavior, as drawn from us by Mother Cow. As we milk her, we develop a loving, reciprocal relationship with her, her sons, the bulls, and Mother Nature. The pujari, with loving devotion, offers Krishna a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. Practically, the same things loving Vaishya cowherds and teamsters offer their cows and oxen. Thus, by working with them in harmony with nature to arrange for these very offerings, everyone's endeavor comes full circle. Drawing the principles of religiosity in liquid form by the act of hand milking Mother Cow in concert with all the economic, social, and practical adjustments required to make this simple act possible, we lovingly maintain the cows for Krishna's pleasure, for our own sustenance, the nourishment of our brain, and ultimately enhancing our intelligence. We have, by virtue of this simple lifestyle, the time and inclination to pursue spiritual knowledge. The steady performance of these seemingly mundane duties with genuine affection for the cows, Lord Krishna's dearmost friends, are the personal ornaments we draw from Mother Cow as we milk her. These same fundamental economic activities are eminently accessible to any common man living a simple agrarian lifestyle, content in the knowledge that he controls his own food supply, thereby opening the door of opportunity for anyone to develop the finer tissues of their brain and, in the association of devotees, to, in due course, achieve self-realization. Now let's hear from Hare Krishna Devi Dasi, how she personally perceives this extraordinary, inescapable connection between pious cow protection, working with oxen, and the development of these pious religious qualities as manifest by this service. Peacefulness. Cows and bulls are sensitive to human moods. Cows will not give milk if the milker acts upset. Oxen will not learn commands if the trainer is angry. The cowherd has to cultivate peacefulness to get the job done. Austerity. The use of oxen regulates the scale of production, which helps guarantee that land and wealth are fairly distributed. Because the work of caring for the cows and the land is satisfying, artificial sources of pleasure are not required. Purity. Cows can tolerate a wide range of physical conditions, but they cannot tolerate filth. They quickly become diseased if not kept clean. Honesty. Cows are straightforward and their service demands straightforwardness. It's hard to cheat with them. Either you give them good food, water, and affection, or you don't. Either you're punctual for milkings or you're not. Either you keep them clean or you don't. When you make a mistake or get lazy, you'll probably get a quick reaction. Industrial scale food production is incompatible with a small scale, locally produced and consumed, biodiverse, ecologically sensitive paradigm inherent in the village-based model lifestyle supported by the Varnashram social system. This simple agrarian model completely eliminates routine destructive soil tillage, GMO seed cost, long distance transportation, and petrochemicals, inorganic mineral or fish-based fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides, middlemen, marketing, and the delivery costs inherent in the profit-based industrial model. The picturesque scene, the green paddy field, enlivens the heart of the poor agriculturalist, but it brings gloom to the face of the capitalist who lives by exploiting the poor farmers. During the 1910s and 20s, agricultural engineers helped spread an industrial ideal among farmers while promoting tractors, electrification, pesticides, chemical fertilizers, and hybrid seeds in the efforts to make farms as rational and factory-like as possible. Where once most Americans had been effectively self-sufficient and raised a diversity of flora and fauna, they were increasingly encouraged through policy, education, and economic changes to reorganize their farms around mechanical logic more suited to high-intensity commodity production, which required inputs manufactured elsewhere. This, in turn, fueled commercial efforts to commodify farming, creating new dependencies on tractor manufacturers, chemical producers, and later seed supply companies. Hybrid technology created in the 1930s permitted the capture, control, and industrialization of seed production, transforming seeds from a renewable asset into a commodified input, a model extended by the legal license to patent living things through genetic authorship 60 years later. Industrial agribusinessmen produce milk for profit, pollute the land and water with dung, urine, and poison waste, and lose precious topsoil to run off into rivers and lakes, compromising aquatic life. Their demoralized laborers live lives of quiet desperation in a futile search for satisfaction. Their milk cows are slaughtered as soon as their milk production is deemed no longer economically viable. The remainder of their herd family, calves and bulls, are practically all slaughtered for meat early on in their lives. The social system we live in directly determines the means of food and fiber production utilized. City dwellers rely on industrial scale farmers. They have lost all contact with the source of their subsistence. Small holding, eco-sensitive farmers rely directly on the soil, the cows, and their local community for the production of essential goods. The social organization, Varnashram Dharma, required to maintain a simple, small farm community with a necessary level of functional care for the whole environment is enormous. Each individual in this community has the opportunity to play out their own personal propensities and members of a cohesive social unit focused on proper cow care. This lifestyle in turn ensures adequate DHA, intelligence, spiritual understanding, the opportunity for nice sadhana, and ultimately a spiritually progressive life for each and every community member, no matter their particular social role. The widespread use of ox power in local scale agriculture can, with appropriate austerity, supplant the present large-scale agribusiness economic model, which relies on the extensive use of non-renewable petroleum resources for field work, transportation, stationary power, and some fertilizers, while simultaneously regenerating degraded soil, returning the unemployed population to the land, and providing immediate tangible value and satisfaction from our daily work. This was, in fact, the most prevalent agricultural model worldwide until the Industrial Revolution and the concomitant widespread utilization of petroleum products only a few hundred years ago. Large-scale industrial agriculture is often held up as the solution for feeding the world's growing population, but small farms with about 25 acres or less, along with family-run operations, presently produce over 70% of the world's food. Now we understand why cows should be offered grasses, especially soft, fragrant grasses, which are used to feed the cows, so they will be strong and healthy and give nice milk. The farmer's responsibility is to care for the soil, all the living entities on the farm, the local ecological balance, and to arrange for others to assist in growing and delivering food and fiber for clothing, and to implement and maintain local scale commerce for the benefit of the entire community. The cow's responsibility is to fertilize the soil and to harvest fresh plant material, thereby encouraging the continued robust photosynthesis and plant growth necessary to deliver DHA-rich, nutritious milk to her cowherd family. The ox's responsibility is to be trained and engaged in his natural fatherly role of service to society in agriculture and transportation, producing and distributing fruits, vegetables, grains, and fiber for clothing, just as we and other living entities thrive by understanding and following our own unique duties within society. By taking milk, one can prolong one's life, develop his brain, execute devotional service, and ultimately attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Proper cow care, in accordance with these essential biological and spiritual principles, will provide at least the minimum qualification, intelligence, for civilized individuals to move forward on the path of self-realization. This form of cow care will, in addition, reduce the demands of the tongue for the flesh of the cow and the need and desire for endless preoccupation with the distracting objects of the industrial world, freeing up time and nurturing a mentality suitable to take up actual spiritual life. Robust agricultural production utilizing photosynthetic energy captured directly from the sun by green plants, locally grown and harvested in partnership with cows and oxen, is the ecologically sustainable, long-term economic and social base. This agrarian lifestyle offers the added benefit of the opportunity for spiritual advancement for every member of any local community, participating directly in self-sufficient food, grain, and fiber production, supported by the Varnashram social system. DHA is essential to vigorous health, human life, and apparently aids in the development and robust function of brain tissue, specialized for use in philosophical introspection. Cow's milk could be the only widely accessible and ecologically sustainable source of DHA on Earth. Milk, yogurt, ghee, dung, and urine from the cow are necessary for sacrifice to Lord Krishna. The ultimate goal of human life is self-realization and service to God. These facts establish a fundamental devotional imperative supported by biological evidence for embracing a socioeconomic and cultural system sustained at its core by cows and oxen. So it's interesting. There's a number of groups worldwide who've established dairy animal care standards. And I list off, what, a dozen or so here. If you read, some of them are very detailed in terms of their description of what it is that can be done to enhance the standard of care for dairy animals. However, none of them reach the bar that we can set, which is lifetime protection for the entire herd, free from the spiritual burden imposed on society by cow slaughter. Economically viable engagement for all members of the herd, all of the cow herds and their families. A socially and spiritually progressive community lifestyle centered around and sustained by proper cow care. And finally, a lifestyle recommended for humanity by the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. So that's it. Comments, questions, thoughts?
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. You kind of blazed through that, so made sure you got everything in. Oh, some holy man, dude's got it all backwards. Yeah. Well, to the last one, I think, was it your very last slide that had the list of, no, the one before that, with all the groups that have a standard. So one of them I see listed is ahimsa, slaughter-free milk. Is that, you're referring to the devotee project near Leicester? Is that what that is?
Yes, yes.
So you said none of these reach the standard, but wouldn't that be the exception?
It is the exception. You are correct.
Okay. And I have, I have a devil's advocate question or challenge. Someone might say, well, you know, DHA, yes, we all need DHA. So I get DHA because I eat cows. You know, I also have some milk now and then, but so it's actually a question. Isn't the DHA that cows and oxen take from plants, doesn't that also go into their, you know, their flesh, their muscles and so on?
Yes, that
So that
absolutely does.
So that means that, you know, meat eating people, what I want to say is we can't so quickly say the only way to get DHA is to keep cows and not slaughter them and just take their milk. Because someone can say, well, I get DHA, I slaughter my cows. Thank you very much.
It's exactly correct. Yes, that's why these standards are so important. Lifetime protection, avoiding the spiritual burden imposed by society from cow slaughter. You of course have to come to accept that that is a burden on society, but once you have, then it eliminates the opportunity to take the flesh of the cow for DHA.
Yeah. Also, I don't know any statistics. I don't remember, but I've read here and there that like Chinese people, they generally are said to be lactose intolerant. of course, I guess, yeah, they eat a lot of fish. I wonder if there's kind of another factor to bring into the whole discussion, namely lactose intolerance, because I understand it's significant that it changes also in the course of an individual's life. One starts out being lactose tolerant, and then later one becomes lactose intolerant. Would you have anything to say about that?
Sure. Well, one thing is, you mentioned the Chinese. Fact is that many Chinese actually do take milk, dairy products, probably more than those who don't. And, generally speaking, those that live along any coastline are going to be taking more marine based DHA. So that's one thing to understand. Another thing is that there's, to the best of my knowledge, very little work has been done on understanding if this issue of lactose intolerance for those who either have always in their life or have developed later in life lactose intolerance, if it's something that they can overcome by taking milk from properly cared for cows, as described herein. So that's another issue is, is it a question of the nature of the milk itself? Another question is, you do see throughout the world, there are some cultures where milk itself is not taken as a liquid, but it's taken as a fermented product of some sort, be it a yogurt or a cheese, which at that point you've sidestepped the lactose issue. So you're not having to, you can still get the benefit of the DHA, but not having to take the sugar that you may have some problem with digesting. So there's a number of things that one needs to look at in fine detail before you can just out of hand say, well, there's so many people that can't take milk because they're lactose intolerant. So bad argument.
Okay, thank you. And Madhava Puri Prabhu comments, some claim lactose intolerance is correlated to A1 milk and that many intolerant persons could take A2 milk. Of course, that's a whole nother topic. I don't know if you've researched that, but that's maybe for another time. I have one more question, and then Prabhu is waiting patiently. Another maybe devil's advocate question, but what about, we're talking about all this nice fresh grazing for cows. What about countries like in continental Europe? The further north you go, but I think all the way down to the Balkan countries, it's a problem in the winter, are spending at least 6 months in the barn. So would you have any comments on that?
Sure, yeah. One thing will be the way their food is conserved. Some methods of conservation are going to maintain some DHA. Another consideration that's far more important and that I'm emphasizing here is that with proper attention to the details of one's farm, you know, the soil, the climate, the natural environment as a whole, and then what plants and animals one encourages in the pastures. You can have a pasture with 3 or 4 or 5 varieties of forage for the cows, or you can have a pasture that may have 50 varieties, and you selectively encourage varieties that are going to have the most potential for growth. You mentioned in northern and extreme northern and extreme southern climates, you can still work very hard to find the plants that are going to grow even in the winter months. There's one dairy farm in New York State, central New York, that has been working on this problem for about 10 years now. And they're able to graze their cows, their dairy cows, for about 9 or 10 months a year at this point. And they've only been working on finding appropriate plant material for their pastures for that period of time. And so it can be done. It's just a matter of becoming attuned to what works in your environment.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's something.
That's one of the things that makes it so important for us to be real farmers, people that you get into it. It's not like, okay, I got a cow and I'll put them out there and they'll eat some grass and I'll go down to the store and buy them some hay and everything will be good. To do this properly, we have to become real farmers, people that figure out how this thing works.
It's a meditation also, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Prabhu Das Prabhu.
Jai, thank you very much, Prabhu, for this nice presentation, very detailed and interesting. My first question is it possible to put the full screen? Because I think now is not useful anymore, this, so we can see better. But this is,
Let's see.
if it is possible, otherwise.
It's probably just a matter of figuring out how to do it. I am not expert at this subject.
There's a button at the top of the screen. I think you'll find. It says something like close share screen or something. No, not that.
Here we go. Stop share. There we go.
Yeah, stop share.
Thank you.
How is that? Is that better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have a few questions. One, very simple. Yesterday, one devotee was making ghee. He says that he has his own cow. And he says that it takes the fat to make the ghee, to make butter and then ghee. So what about the DHA? It remains in that milk, or is mostly in the fat that it takes from?
Ultimately, it's found in the fat. However, he's not able to take all of the fat out of the milk. So there will be some, but that's one of the it's one of the sad things that's the last 15, 20 years or so, skim milk has been a big thing because people think they're going to get fat from drinking full fat milk, when in fact, full fat milk is what, anywhere from 2.5 to 4% milk of fat anyway. It's not all fat. So yeah, you don't have a whole lot of fat in skim milk, and so you're not going to have a whole lot of DHA. DHA is ultimately, it's a,
mostly in the, and when you make ghee, the DHL remains there or not?
it does remain, yes.
It does remain.
In fact, yeah, the concern that some people have expressed is, does heating damage the DHA? And at the level of heat required to produce ghee, no, or the level of heat required to say, heat your milk instead of drinking cold milk, that level of heat does not damage the DHA.
Thank you. Very nice. And what is the difference between the DHA contained in the milk and in algae?
Oh, there's no, it's the same exact molecule. The difference is that, yes, there are some cultures, Japanese, for instance, are well known for eating seaweed, a macroalgae, and there are some cultures that will eat the algae that grows in a pond, just that green slime, so to speak, spirulina. So same exact DHA, it's just that it's not nearly as accessible worldwide, generally speaking, particularly if we're not factoring in long distance transportation.
Yes, as you said,
cold storage, etc.
Yes, as you mentioned already. Thank you.
Yeah, you can live in the middle of a continent and keep a cow, and that cow can go out and harvest your DHA for you.
Thank you. What is the difference between the DHA? For example, there are two kind of cows. They both take good grass, but one is protected and the other one is not protected. So is there any difference in the quality of the DHA? Or
once again, it's simply a molecule. A molecule isn't
molecule
going to be
okay. The difference
it's
is the quality
one cow to another.
And the last question is about the cheese. Is the DHA also contained in the cheese?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for your researches and this precious service that you are doing for all the Vaishnavas. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you for tuning in and checking it out, and hopefully we can do better in the future, all of us.
With this question, krishna-ksetra, you got the Italians with the cheese. And all
Yeah.
So definitely the next time, if you want to come to Italy, you will have a place to stay in our temple.
Nice
Very good.
nice ahimsa cheese and pasta.
Yeah, and pizza. We
All
make
right.
pizza.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Right.
Okay,
Are you making your own grain?
We are developing a project since a couple of years. I'm working on it. So very nice things are happening. A lot of work still to be done. Let's say that.
Yes. Yes, a lot of work.
Yeah.
There's one farmer in the UK who spent literally his entire lifetime, 75 years, working on developing the proper mixture of grasses in his pastures so that he would have fresh grass for his cows most of the year. That's what he did his entire life. He wasn't so much interested in, okay, what are the details of my cows? he was interested in what are the details of my grass. That was his farming.
I like that point, the person you mentioned saying that cows are gourmets. Some of our attendees here, I don't know if they'll be familiar with that word. It's a French word, but it's standard English also. A gourmet is one who has is a connoisseur, is a fine, in German, ein Feinschmecker, someone who can appreciate fine tastes. So having fine discrimination in eating, that's gourmet. A gourmet cook is, high class cook. The opposite, I think, is gourmand, which is one who just eats anything and everything, is not discriminating. So cows are gourmets. I think that's a nice. I think we could make a mantra out of that. We could promote that,
Yeah, well, I think we may have mentioned this last session. A cow, if fed, sometimes a farmer will get 4 or 5 different types of feed product, and they'll put it through a machine that kind of chops it up into fine pieces. And then they'll feed the cows this mixture of all these different feeds. And the cow, depending upon their particular taste at the time, they'll go through those little tiny pieces, that may be just so big, and pick out the little pieces that they like to eat, and they'll leave the rest. Even though the farmer was trying so hard to mix it all together, so they couldn't do that.
Yeah, well, there's another English word for that, isn't it? Being persnickety.
Yeah, the picky eater.
Persnickety.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question here from Ananda Mayi. She put in the chat. There's a science about the influence of stars, moon, calendar to agriculture. Can we know something about this? There are farmers, for example, in Poland who use it and have great results. The growth of vegetables is of vegetables is incredible. Can we also use this? Have you looked into that at all, Purushottamji?
Very little. I haven't spent the time. My perspective on that, though, is that, if one learns that science, which I suspect is a legitimate science, one learns the science, you're going to find that there's going to be a benefit. So yes, why not? If it works, use it.
Well, actually, there is something. It's mostly related to the biodynamics practice in the West. It was mostly promoted by Rudolf Steiner. And in India also now there are a series of groups. They are promoting what they call Vedic agriculture. And one of these groups is connected to Maharishi Yogi. And he's also talking a lot about the lunar cycle. And another group also talking about Vedic agriculture. It's mostly related to the ancient texts of agriculture. But it's a well-known science among the common farmer in India that he will consider seasons and cycles of the moon, not as detailed as Rudolf Steiner does in the biodynamic practice. Actually, there is a site where you can download those calendars quite easily. So yeah, it's one of the practices used.
This is why I emphasize that we need to become sensitive, good farmers. So, and a good farmer is going to take advantage of whatever knowledge there is to improve the production of his farm.
Mm.
So if you come across whatever the system that's going to be in harmony with local ecology, not as some destructive practice that may, in short term give some benefit, but if it can support the system as a whole, wonderful. Take advantage.
Dira Lalita is also asking in the chat, how do we connect the population of humans living in cities and towns, abandoning agriculture 60 or 100 years ago for corporate businesses with the benefits of agriculture? That's the big how can we question.
Sure. That's what this Professor Samaj, who wrote this book.
I suspect his name would be pronounced Smaye, but anyway.
Thank you. It may well be. In any case, he very in extreme detail analyzes the conditions that brought us to where we're at. And basically he's saying, we've got ourselves in a situation where, if nothing else, Mother Nature will take over. We won't be able to sustain for too much longer. And we will be forced by Mother Nature to change our ways. There's an interesting situation that occurred. I mentioned it in this presentation, the special period in Cuba where within 1 year's time, when the Soviet Union broke up and Cuba lost their primary, they have about 90% of their trading partner was Russia, where they got petroleum, they got food, they got industrial parts for tractors and other, industrial types of production materials. And what they traded was sugar and tobacco. That was all gone within 1 year. They lost it. They had no economic base for sustaining their population. They practically had nothing to eat. It was a crisis. It was a serious crisis. And so that's equivalent to, okay, some analysts will say we've got 75 years. Some will say we may have as much as 300 years left of petroleum at the rate we use it. Even if we keep finding more and more, eventually it's a finite resource. There's not going to be any more. So this is a microcosm of that happened in Cuba. And interestingly, the way they handled it, the very first thing that they did, Castro's brother Raul said, "All right, we're not going to have tractors, we're not going to have petroleum, we're not going to have any food. We're going to need to do something about this. We're going to make it illegal to kill a cow." So that's what they did. Immediately, he said, "No more cow killing. We're going to have oxen." So that was what that story was that I read, where you had a situation where it was a crisis and they realized they had to do something. And so they substituted oxen for tractors. Oxen are reproducing themselves and you don't need petroleum. And then they started growing food organically. And all of a sudden they were, within a couple of years, they overcame this crisis and were able to feed the population and, make it through until they could develop trading partners elsewhere in the world.
And now
So
they've gone and that means now they've fallen back to their earlier system since they got
Well,
trading.
it went on for, the special period went on for about 10 years from the end of the 80s until the end of the 90s. And yes, to some degree, they've gone back. They are certainly using tractors and petroleum products now. However, what came of that is an awareness on everyone's part that their food supply was crucial. You know, it wasn't just something that, okay, comes on the ship and we can, you know, just pay for it. They had to do something about that. So now you find integrated within the cities, they call them organoponicos, where they have these giant organic farms that are producing fruits and vegetables for the population of the cities. And you literally go just right outside your condo or your small house, and there's this huge farm where everybody in the city is helping to grow food.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say about that, that's a good question. How do we go back, or how do we transition? And for a farmer, the biggest challenge is because the local farmers will say that's not possible anymore. It's just like trying to build an eco house. The builders will say, oh, that technology is too outdated. You won't have labor to do it. So the biggest challenge is really someone who can understand the system and can propose. So in India, this researcher from biodynamics called Peter Proctor, if you research him, he established 15,000 biodynamic farms in India. 15,000, that was quite a substantial number. And today, this biodynamic institution, they work very hard. Similarly, Brazil has started something like, I don't know if it's in the house of thousands, teachers of syntropic farming, agroforestry. Like every day there's a new initiative coming up, a new teacher, with Ernest Gitt as their teacher. So there are different places. So I think the hardest choice for any ISKCON project to do it is to have someone who believes it and is willing to take the risk of the experimentation period. And once that's in place, then you have a nice product. And there are many, many models out there who are doing it with success, with premium products, with a dedicated market, people valuing that, either it's milk or food products or cosmetics. There are many, many areas where there's a lot of success in premium markets. So I think if we make the bond between the city and farms who are going regenerative, that's a huge step that we could make in ISKCON. Like Gitanagri is doing the CSA program, Purushottam Kshetra could speak more on that. I think that's the future for our farms, that tandem, urban, rural, with our farms and a dedicated congregation that could support experimental stages of farming.
This is, of course, a very rich conversation, and I'm into sort of keeping a 1.5 hour schedule with our meetings. And so I want to suggest we end here for today, but we can always go on at other times. And our next time could be 2 weeks from today, on the 10th, if everyone's willing. And yeah, Purushottam Kshetra Prabhu Ki Jai. Thank you for giving us your time. I don't know if you added anything to the file that you sent me or if it's the same. If it's the same, then it's nice. I have it, and if others want to see it, I can share. But if you've added to that, maybe I should get your latest edition of the file.
Sure,
Is that
yeah,
possible?
yeah, I have added some, so I'll share with you.
Okay, that would be good. This book from Chris Smaye looks interesting, A Small Farm Future, because I think, this question's coming up again. It came here. Srimati Jayanti asked this. So, okay, how do we do it? How do we get started? Have 12 cows. Where do I start? Which I think also gets us back to what is the function of the cow protection and agriculture ministry. I think a lot of it, a major focus is, what shall we say, counseling and coaching. Education, broadly speaking, but sort of having a, I can imagine a call-in service, people call in, Prabhu, what do I do now? I have this cow and she's sick. I don't know how she's sick. And we tell them, call the veterinarian. No, but we need to have resources for people to come and get ideas how to do it. And we need examples like Divya Prabandha. He's not talking about it, he's doing it. Right?
Sure.
Any last, any final comment from you, Divya Prabandha? Do you want to say something?
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this presentation. I was just thinking to interrupt you with this example of cows picking up the remain, how to say, leaving aside the food which they just, they're really picky. Actually, we here in our area we have at least for, well, let's say 5 months we cannot keep cows outside because anyway there is no grass. There are already, temperature was several times already minus 4 or 5, so all grass is gone. But we accumulated the hay, and we have actually 2 types of hay. One hay is in the May June season, and then the second one is at the end of summer, of August, and that one is much better because it has, well, I don't know, probably because of sun or it has very fine and very aromatic plants which are actually that time blossoming and cows love this. There is a less quantity of this second hay, but cows are really like, it's a big difference between these two. And then this first hay also very often there are like the plants are thicker, and when there is a less rains, then they become also hard. So cows will eat everything, but they will live. It's amazing, actually. You can imagine how the cow with such a huge mouth and teeth, how they can separate actually this plants, these hard plants, and they just you just collect them, you clean the. It's amazing. It's just really amazing.
Yeah.
So it's really like that. It's really like that. They're really picky. They are not like a goat. Goat will eat anything. Or a pig, to pigs you can give anything and they will eat, but cows are not like that. Not at all.
No, they're gourmets.
Yes.
There's a mantra in there somewhere.
I think there is. Yeah, cows are gourmets.
Our cows are gourmets.
Yeah, we can say it like that. Okay, so I think we'll end on that happy note. And thank you all for joining. And we'll be back. We'll be back in 2 weeks, I believe. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Takoti Vaishnavinda ki jai.
Jai.
Jai Gaur Premanande Hari.
Vivo.
Hari Hari Bol.
Haribo.